Greetings, Race Community. Brent coming in live with today's guest, Luigi Amendola, who serves as Vice President for University Advancement at Loyola University, Chicago. Welcome, Luigi.
Oh, thank you, Brent. Nice to be here.
Well, I'm excited to connect. We had a chance to sync for a few minutes a couple weeks back, and so we're extra prepared here today. But I wanted to start today's episode with my go-to question, which is, take me back to junior year of high school. Who was that, Luigi? And what led you to Lewis University in Romeoville, Illinois?
Yeah. Uh, gosh, I don't even remember who that that kid was as a junior in high school. I was probably confused, and not really sure what I was doing or where I was going. High school was an interesting time for me. So uh, I'm a first generation college student and I'm a first generation American. Um, and so
And
uh,
where did your parents grow up?
so my parents are from Italy, from the southern part of Italy, and they immigrated here. They came separately and met here, but they immigrated around the ages of 16, 17. Um, and so uh, so high school was interesting for me because
And
uh,
can I just ask, did they come from Italy straight to Illinois, or were there stops along the way?
so my mom and her family came straight to Illinois. They actually settled in Oak Park. They had some family that was already there in the area. And my dad came via boat through Ellis Island. So he started in New York, took the train down to Chicago again. They, had some family that was in the area. So Illinois was the final destination point. They just got here in slightly different ways.
Man, I kind of want you to record a podcast with your parents. This is a great setup.
Yeah, it would be interesting. It would be interesting for sure, for sure. Um, yeah, so so just sort of given my upbringing, I ended up going to a very good high school, um, but I was with kids who were just in a very different socioeconomic bracket than I was. And so, for me, high school was not, I know there are some people who feel like high school are the glory years. That was not the case for me. And it really was at Lewis where I felt like I started to find my voice, find my identity, get a feel for, you know, how I was going to develop as a person. And it was totally by accident. I mean, again, I have an older brother. Um, and he went to the U.S. Naval Academy. So that's a very different process than your traditional, 4-year institution. So I didn't have a lot of guidance around how do you choose a college and, all that kind of stuff. My parents knew college was important. They felt like, this is how you have a different career path than what we're doing. So they were very supportive of that, but they didn't really understand how it all worked.
Yeah.
Um, and I had an uncle who went to Lewis University for a year. He played baseball there and then got injured. But so that's how I knew of Lewis. So I just went onto the campus. Um, and as I got there, I was like, this this just feels right. I think I can go here. It wasn't about the programs. It wasn't, it wasn't that thoughtful. It was more of just a feeling. Um, but it really turned out to be the best decision I could have made.
Tell me more about why you feel that way. What stands out from your experience there? And I would imagine, as a fellow first generation college graduate, mentorship is extra critical when you don't have the built-in family guidance and perspective. And so, just sort of who took you under their wing, or who pointed you, in specific directions during college.
Yeah. So there were a couple of things. I mean, the first, so Lewis is sponsored by the Christian Brothers. Um, and again, before I went to Lewis, I didn't know who the Christian Brothers were. I didn't even know what that meant. Um, but the dorm that I lived in, interestingly enough, was it was the only dorm on campus that was still owned by the Christian Brothers. So it was actually sort of separate from other university housing. And the only way you could live there was to basically be invited by the brothers to be there. Um, it was small. It was only 60, and it was all boys. And so on one part of the building, you had students, and then on the other part of the building, you had the Christian Brothers. We had our own cafeteria, and so we ate with the brothers. Um, so in part for me, it was sort of the living experience that was really helpful. I also interacted with for the first time just people from different backgrounds. I lived with a lot of international students. So all of those things just sort of helped with my perspective, but the brothers um, were really important just in terms of my development. Um, and then I had a faculty member, Father Kevin Spees, who taught business. But again, he was just, for whatever reason, someone who took interest in me and found opportunities um, to provide guidance and more so encouragement. Um, I, I think for a large chunk of my life, even post college, I didn't really have a sense of like what exactly was possible, right? I think my sights were probably set too low. And again, it's because I only knew what I knew and what was around me. And so it was like individuals like Father Spees and then others, once I got out of Lewis, that really helped me to understand, what was possible, and that they had confidence in me that there are things that I could do that I was like, are you sure? So Lewis was great. Lewis is where I found advancement.
Yeah,
Uh,
tell me about kind of stumbling, into that office and sort of early reflections. I'm guessing, talking about multi-million-dollar philanthropy wasn't a topic of conversation growing up.
yeah, no, it was not discussed around the dinner table, that's for sure. So I qualified for federal work study, and the first job I got was working at the fast food place on campus, flipping burgers and doing that kind of stuff. And it was an awful job. And the hours were terrible. The cleanup, I mean, I basically worked four to close. I wasn't getting back to my room after cleanup until after midnight. And so after doing this for a few months, I was like, I just can't keep doing this. So I was just looking for another option, and I saw an office job, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and it just happened to be in the advancement office. So I got that job, and again, right, I didn't really know what any of this meant, and
But
I was
first impressions, you're like, it smells better.
yeah, right. For me, it was like, oh,
Right?
an office, and like, all right, this is great, and people were nice, and um, but I was working there for a few weeks, and I remember saying to my supervisor, uh, it's great that all these people are here and they're working for free. And he looks at me and he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was typing up acknowledgement letters and all that kind of stuff, and I kept seeing not for profit. I kept writing not for profit. I didn't know what that meant, and so I said to him, well, if you're not making a profit, then you can't afford to pay people. And he laughed and was like, no, that's not what that means. And you can have a really good career doing this. Um, and so I worked in that office for 3 years. And then someone who worked at Lewis eventually went on and became a executive vice president for the Advocate Charitable Foundation, which is the fundraising arm for Advocate Healthcare, which is a healthcare system here in Chicago. Uh, and she reached out and said, we've never had an intern before. Would you be interested in interning with us? Um, And so I ended up interning there for a couple of summers, and then, they hired me when I graduated.
And so you go from thinking nonprofit means non-revenue to working your way into this internship. And along the way, at some point, you start to understand what's actually happening and that there's a ton of revenue and that there's a ton of need and what philanthropy really is. And it's one thing to sort of stumble into the office job, to take the internship. It's another thing to start to think, hey, I could do this. I could see this being a career path. And so when did it go from sort of opportunistic, basic work experience to, hey, maybe I should do this for real?
Yeah, I think for me it was I really connected to the mission, so I think at the end of the day, what really appealed to me was uh, sort of having a job that had a sense of purpose, um, and that was doing some good. And so uh, that for me, I think was kind of my calling into this profession was really around, the mission and the role that, um, I can't write a big check, but if I can help other people do that, that will, um, provide needed support to individuals, families, communities. I thought that would be pretty cool. And so that's kind of, what drew me to the whole thing.
Can I ask on that front though, because it's one thing to sort of be connected with the mission at sort of an abstract level, like this is good in the world. It's another thing to like really feel it, right? And there are moments on my journey, on your journey, where it's gone from like sort of big picture mission to like really experiencing the impact in a way that just gets you fired up, where it really starts to connect. And where there are moments early on where you sort of felt like, wow, like this is more than just even the abstract mission. Like this person did this thing, which led this person to be able to do that thing. Obviously, you've got your own personal experience, but just where else did you start to really kind of get the bug?
It really hit me. So I did 4 years in healthcare, and then got into higher ed. And I'd say it really hit me when I got into higher ed. Um, and again, I think it's because of my own lived experiences. Uh, at least for me, there are these moments of reflection, right? As you get older, you're like, oh, like this makes sense. And I think when I started working in higher ed, uh, it sort of clicked with me around it's not about the it's not necessarily about the program or the building or the endowed faculty position, but it is about the impact that an education can have, not just on the individual, but how it changes the family dynamic going forward. And so I could see that uh, in the individuals and the students at the institutions that we were serving. And then I started to like reflect on that and be like, oh wait, that's right, that's me. Right now I have two kids. My oldest is a freshman in college. Um, and what's been so interesting for me is thinking about what are the conversations at our dinner table, um, and how is that different from when I grew up, and how do we talk about college and the value of an education and the opportunities that provides versus, what was that like for me? And so that so once I got into higher ed and started connecting all those dots, that's when it really was like, all right, like this is exactly why I'm doing it. This is why I choose to work at the types of institutions of higher ed that I've worked at so far, in terms of their missions and the students, that they're serving. So it's all um, uh, so anyway, so higher ed was really the aha moment for me.
Yeah. So I hear that, I hear your story, I hear my story. And I think when your lived experience is so positive, when you can so directly connect access to education to relationships and opportunities that will be passed down for generations. It's super powerful, but at the same time, the headlines would make it seem like nothing you and I are talking about ever happens. It's not true, or it's a legacy of the 90s, but that's not what happens today. And I think that's where I struggle, because anybody that works around this field can rattle off life-changing impact stories for hours. And it's as if they don't happen when you see the headlines. And so I guess I got to ask you, do you question that mission? Do you have any hesitation, given how much negativity, or I should say inconsistency, there is in the headlines today?
No, I mean, not for me. I certainly am. There are lots of paths that people can take. And so I am not one that says everyone needs to go and get a 4-year degree, right? The vocations and vocational schools, and those are all great and all provide great career paths. So for me, there's not a one thing is better than the other. But there is no question to me and in my mind that the value of higher education is as strong today, I think, as it was. And that's not to say we don't have our challenges
Yeah.
and that things aren't, perfect. But at the end of the day, uh, I do think people are better for it. Uh, and sort of over the trajectory of their lives, right? Like, sometimes you can look at a snapshot of what someone is doing 4 or 5 years after graduation. Um, but I think when you look at someone's life over the course of 20, 30, 40 years post, you know, I don't find many people who say it wasn't worth it,
Right.
uh, and that I regret it, or who, people who have consumed our product are also encouraging their kids, right, to
Yep.
kind of go down the path. So I think that does speak to the fact that there is still value in what we do, and uh, how we shape lives and futures.
Tell me about the decision to get your MBA. There aren't a lot of people in this field, I think, many people have gotten master's degrees, but not that many have done the MBA based on my experience. And then even fewer have done the MBA while working as a development officer at the institution where they're receiving their MBA. So that had to present a pretty unique perspective in the class discussions, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I'd love to say that I have been very thoughtful in many of my choices in my career and life, uh, but that hasn't really been the case. So, I mean, even with the MBA, so I actually started to pursue my MBA while I worked with the Advocate Charitable Foundation. And interestingly enough, I started my MBA here at Loyola Chicago. Um, and then when I got the job at UIC, and then you have the tuition benefits, I was like, all right, well, maybe we'll put this on hold, and then I'll go do it for free. But for me, the pursuit of the MBA in part was it wasn't going to hurt me. Um, and again, I was still early in my career. I was 3 years out of undergrad when I first started to pursue my MBA. And again, I think at that point too, it was maybe this will give me additional options, right? So I didn't know if I was going to stay in the nonprofit lane for the next 25 years. And so I thought that an MBA would provide maybe some additional flexibility if at some point I decided I wanted to pivot. Um, and yeah, and then doing it, ultimately at the place that I was working, um, that was interesting because again, then you get an inside look at the product that you're selling, right? You're saying this place is great and the educational experience is great and the faculty are great. but then you actually get to go through it and be like, oh, all right, yeah, this is legit. What I'm telling other people is actually true, and it's my experience of when I'm in the classroom and sort of what that educational experience has looked like. So it's been fun to, it was fun to do that at UIC, and then to go back to my alma mater later. Um, to work in advancement, right? Again, having gone there and gotten my education and being able to sort of tell that story and connect with people in a different way was really fun.
And so you did decide to stay in the nonprofit lane. I don't know if that was a forever decision. Forever is a long time, but you finished the MBA and then stayed at UIC and then had the opportunity to go back home, if you will, to Lewis. Was that a hard decision? Easy? I mean, where were you at that stage?
Yeah, it was a hard decision. So, I'd been at UIC for 8 years. I was relatively new in a role. I became the chief advancement person for their College of Engineering. And I was in that role for about a year and a half uh, when Lewis came calling. So Lewis was getting ready to go into a campaign. They were staffing up, and the president of the university had said to the VP at the time, you know, you should give Luigi a call. He might be interested, and obviously, given my skill set, he thought that there were things I could bring back to the university. Um, so when I got the call from the VP, of course, it's yeah, I'm happy to have the conversation. It's my alma mater, so I'll listen. Um, and the hard part for me was uh, I was I was a little concerned about uh, having worked at a large R1 public university, and then going to a relatively small place. And then what does that mean for my future, right? In terms of where do I go from there? Um, uh, so there was a little bit of concern, for me around, you know, could I come back into a larger place at some point in the future if that's what I wanted to do, or how would I be looked at? So that was a little bit of the concern, but at the end of the day, I really wanted to work at my alma mater. I mean, I love the place. It did so much for me. Um, so anyway, and we were just finishing up our campaign at UIC, so it also felt like a good time. The campaign was ending. Um, and so, it was to make the transition, and the benefits for me is I knew I was going to get more hands-on. The benefits of being at a small place are that you get to do a lot of things. And I was going to have more engagement with the board of trustees. I was going to work more closely with the president. I was going to run the campaign. And those were things, at least at that stage of my career, I wasn't doing at UIC. So it felt like, a chance that I was willing to take, to get some of that experience.
And during that time, over 9 years, second time around at Lewis, what's your favorite memory or two when you think back on that run?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I mean, obviously, I'm really sort of pleased with the team that we put together there. Not just within the advancement division, but even sort of the leadership of the university. I mean, part of the things that happened during that 9-year period, so I went there to be an associate vice president, um, you know, and then became the vice president. And during that period of time, we go through a presidential transition. Um, and so it's sort of like the leadership of the university, and that group, with our new president who came in, uh, the team within the division. I mean, it was just such a good group of people, that I have really fond memories about about working with them. Um, and then, I guess the other thing is we really elevated what fundraising looked like, um, over that 9-year period in terms of the growth. And so obviously just really pleased that I I left the place better than I found it. And more importantly, that they've continued to have success after I've left. And again, I think that just speaks to putting together a really good team that just kind of keeps things. It's not about the person, right? It's sort of you build a good team, things just keep moving as people cycle out. So I've been pleased to see what they've done, in the 4 years that I've been gone.
And so during those 4 years, you have been at Loyola University, Chicago, starting as AVP for development. So sort of taken a, step back, if you will, from an overall leadership and span perspective, but then have had the opportunity to now assume the VP role here in 2025. So was it a tough decision? Did you view it as a step back, sort of step forward, step to the side, and just tell me about the journey there so far.
Yeah, I mean, again, interesting. So I was at Lewis for 9 years and, just felt like I was ready for something different. And it's interesting to go through the job search process. And the thing I spoke about, my concern about going to a place like Lewis, what does that mean post? I mean, I felt a lot of that. I mean, there were positions and places where I was talking to, and they were like, "Well, uh, how big's the how big's the shop at Lewis? How much money did you raise?" Um, and and sometimes it felt like recruiters were more interested in what the press release was going to be about the person than they hired, versus maybe just hiring somebody that can do really good work. And I felt really fortunate that at least the people here at Loyola, valued what I brought to the table. Uh, and again, and for me, it wasn't about the title. I was just interested in doing really good work at a great institution. And I was excited about, what Loyola had to offer and what the potential was for the future. So I didn't really get hung up on the title thing. I always feel like those things take care. You do good work, everything just kind of takes care of itself. Um, so yeah, so being here for, about three or so years, 3.5 years. And then our vice president left in August of 24. And so went through a, period of time where we had an interim vice president. But again, that gave me some opportunities to step up and do some things. And that got some people's attention. And so, here I am now as the vice president, and I feel really grateful and fortunate to have the opportunity to lead again another really outstanding team, um, and be a really great institution.
In our pre-interview questionnaire, you had mentioned your focus on being excellent at the fundamentals and just this idea of sort of quiet, steady focus. And tell me how that manifests in your day to day, or how you've tried to bring that perspective to your team, because I think it is critical. There's a lot of noise, a lot of distraction, a lot of hype, a lot of ways that we can lose focus. So how do you bring a different approach to your work and your team?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple of things. Um, I think part of it is sort of leading by example. So I I do think if you were to ask people about me and kind of and my style, I think one of the things that they would say in terms of how they describe me is I'm very consistent. And so I don't go and chase the shiny objects and sort of distract other people on the team to be like, oh, now we got to go do this thing, right? We set a path, we have very clear goals and expectations, And then it's about how do we execute, and let's not worry about that other stuff. Let's focus on the things that are going to bring us to where we want to go. So I think part of it is you just have to lead by example, um, and not be the person that's causing the distractions for everybody else. So I think I think that's one piece. And then it's just again, I think it's just the repetition. The things that I ask about, the things that I focus on, um, are really the blocking and tackling. So when we're with gift officers, it really is about, at the end of the day, how many attempted contacts have you made, right? How many visits are you getting? What are the questions that you're asking? Are we positioning ourselves to, move this person towards a solicitation? Like, let's just stay focused on that piece of the work, and not get distracted with, these other things. Same thing as it relates to, whether it's our stewardship or even our alumni engagement stuff. It's like engagement for the sake of engagement. Like, let's be very purposeful and let's be very intentional about why we're doing the things that we're doing. And if it ultimately doesn't get us to where we're trying to go, then stop doing it. I think that's the other thing is at least as I've come into this role, a lot of stuff is about what are we doing that we shouldn't be doing, right? I think sometimes we just add things to our plate without and maybe not taking the time to really measure what's the outcome of the work.
Yeah.
And if the outcome isn't what we're getting us to where we need to go, then say no. And let's double down on the things that are working, and invest resources in, other things that we think could be helpful in the work.
Yeah, no, I think it's well said. And we talk a lot about the distinction between leading and lagging indicators. And I think this sector has been way over indexed to lagging indicators. What do you hear about? You hear about the billions, the hundreds of millions raised. You hear about the big gift. You hear about the outcomes at that level, which are super important. But what you don't hear a lot about is like how many quality emails did people send on Thursday,
Right.
led to conversations on Friday, that then led to the visit, that then led to the proposal, that then led to the hundreds of millions. And I think that's where, even with our team, I've oftentimes talked about this idea of, get bored. Like there's a lot of really boring things that if you do consistently, make really exciting things happen over time. And I think that applies to most parts of life, just the consistency of anything, right? Learning a new language or getting physically fit or whatever it may be. It's just we focus a lot on the scale, what the scale says, and not enough on sort of what the calories are per meal, for example. And I think it's that kind of reorientation that is very simple. It's not that easy all the time because there are a lot of distractions in all parts of our life, but it sounds like just that sort of steady focus has served you and your team well.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And we'll kind of see how things play out over the, next 4 to 5 years. But yeah, I mean, I do think, especially in our work here, it is such a long game. And so the consistency, the repetitions, all those sorts of things, it kind of like your 401k, right? You just kind of keep adding to it and the interest starts to compound over time. And then before you know it, you're like, oh, I have something here that's really meaningful and impactful. And so I think it is taking that approach to, to our work. I mean, yes, we have to raise money now and, we need to figure out how to do that, but it is a long game. And so, let's make sure we're doing the consistent work day in and day out that will make this institution better, not just in the next 2 years, but in the next 10, 15, and 20 years.
I'd be crazy if I didn't ask you about one of your colleagues, Sister Jean, who just turned 106 in August. I'm sure most people listening, if you don't know Sister Jean, do a quick search. I don't think you got to write much more than Sister Jean, and she ranks pretty high on Google. So Tell me just about what it's been like to work with such a unique celebrity, if you will.
Yeah, it's been really fun. And the thing for me that's been so amazing is you know, she's just so, I mean, she's so with it, I mean, I guess when I got here, she would have been 100 and maybe 101, I think that, or 102, 102. And yeah, I mean, to be able to go up to a 102-year-old and have conversations and then see them, you know, a year later and they can still remember the conversation and what you were talking about. That's just been, it's inspiring. You're kind of like, gosh, I hope that I can not only get to that age, but also have the mental clarity, that she has had. And she's just so gracious and has been gracious with her time. I mean, um, there's there's not once where I've ever seen someone come up to her, um, where she's turned them away or said, "Oh, I can't do this selfie." I mean, in many cases, she's often saying like, "Well, do you want to take a selfie? Let's get this
Yeah.
done." So I mean, she's been really wonderful, and obviously the run that Loyola had in 2018 to the Final Four and Sister Jean and all those things. I mean, it's really sort of elevated the brand of the institution.
I read that she actually tried to retire in 1994, which is before you and I even got to college. And that's when she was invited to be the chaplain for the basketball team. So a pretty amazing sort of, I don't know, second chapter would be the wrong statement, but what a run. I've got to ask though, obviously she is deeply connected to basketball and athletics. Um, have you been able to engage her in an overall philanthropic or even stewardship perspective? Is she sending thank yous once a year to donors more broadly beyond just the athletics lane? And how do you kind of both respect her focus, but also try to tap into that incredible sort of personality and brand, if you will, for broader development work?
Yeah, I mean, so like on a stewardship perspective, there are a couple of funds that are connected to Sister Jean, and some of those are outside of athletics. And Sister Jean will write personal acknowledgement, handwritten notes to those who make
Wow.
gifts to her fund. Um, uh, and then, yeah, and then, I do think we are a little, um, mindful about how and when we engage her in some of the broader fundraising or stewardship or cultivation uh, efforts. And so we're just really selective about what those look like.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful story and one that I'd encourage everybody to look up if you aren't familiar. I guess where do you see things going from here? What are you excited about on your team? Are you hiring? I mean, what else should people listening keep in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea when this is going to air, but chances are we will be hiring. So yeah, so we're definitely going to be um, looking for some positions really across the advancement division, both on the major gift officer side, as well as on our advancement services and alumni engagement and annual giving efforts. We're in the quiet phase of a campaign, so we're sort of gearing up for that effort. Um, and I guess in the landscape of higher ed, I feel really fortunate to be where I'm at. It's an institution that uh, is strong, and I think really well placed given sort of the challenges that the industry is facing, even when you think about sort of the enrollment challenges that'll be coming for much of higher ed. Um, And so this institution is just really well placed, both from uh, sort of the academic quality, the brand awareness, uh, and the mission. Again, like for me, it kind of comes back to mission. Um, and uh, and I think this is an organization that as big as it is, and as complex as it can be. At the end of the day, the mission connects all of us, and so it very much feels like a community. And it has been great to be a part of a mission focused organization.
I love it. Well, I'm grateful for you to have shared your journey with our audience. I hope that people listening will reach out to you. I assume LinkedIn's a good channel for that, or yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn, or I'm sure my email address is probably on the Loyola website. So always open to connecting with people in the industry, doing sort of informal networking and having conversations. So it's one of the things I really enjoy. It's one of the things I've really come to enjoy about our profession, in that we're not really competing with each other, right? Like our customer base isn't necessarily the same. And so there has been this willingness of sharing of ideas and how we do work and what are the challenges and how are we dealing with them. So anyway, it's one of the things I've really enjoyed about being in this profession, is just how collegial, we all are, and um, we're not guarded, about how we do our work or what's working and not working. So anyways, always happy to talk and connect with folks.
Yeah, look, if you're listening to this and you're on the fence about shooting Luigi a note, an email, a LinkedIn, just do it. Say hello, say you heard him on the Race podcast. See if you'd be willing to do a 20 or 30-minute Zoom intro call. Those things just compound over time, and it feels good to be able to just build your network, and you never know where things lead. So I'd encourage you to do that. It's been one of my favorite parts of hosting this podcast, is all the people who've come up to me at conferences over the years and have said, "Hey, I actually reached out to so-and-so, and then we connected." Sometimes it's led to career opportunities for people. So no promises on that front, but I would encourage you to take Luigi up on the opportunity to connect. Any closing thoughts, Luigi?
No, thank you for reaching out and asking me to do this. And hopefully it's helpful to some of your listeners.
All right. Well, we'll be rooting for Loyola in future Final Fours. It's fun to have a window into into that part of your world, but really just your journey from high school, discovering this sector and really going all in and committing, is one that is inspiring, and I hope others feel the same way. So with that, I'm going to close today's episode with Luigi Amendola, who serves as Vice President for University Advancement at Loyola University, Chicago. Thank you, Luigi, and take care, everybody.